Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of David Sumney? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. David Sumney was born on April 26, 1989, and was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His father, who was also named David, was a dentist. His mother, Margaret, owned a dance studio, along with other family members. Margaret had 2 daughters from a previous marriage. They were several years older than David. David's parents were wealthy. His father, in particular, liked to flaunt his wealth and show people expensive items he had purchased. David received a lot of attention from his parents. They gave him pretty much anything he wanted, and developed a habit of handing David money for completing ordinary tasks, like behaving at the dinner table or getting into a motor vehicle to go somewhere. When David was 5 years old, he had a friend over to play. David and the friend killed a bird. David did not show any emotions, including remorse. His mother was shocked and said, "This is what serial murderers do." The marriage between David's mother and father deteriorated over time. They separated in 2001. David's father continued to live a wealthy lifestyle, but Margaret was financially devastated. She had to close her dance studio and find a traditional full-time job. David went to college in Washington, D.C. and studied mathematics. His father paid for all his expenses, including the tuition and rent for an apartment. In 2010, Margaret visited David at college and was involved in some type of strange incident. Margaret told one of her daughters that David cut himself with a knife, and then she fell down and struck her head. They both ended up in the hospital. Margaret's story seemed suspicious, like she was covering for David. Eventually, David stopped attending classes and was expelled from college. He moved back to Pittsburgh, spending time at both his father's residence and his mother's residence. At around this time, he started telling people that he had become a Navy SEAL, which was not true. For some reason, Margaret believed him and even repeated the story to other people. David also started lifting weights and took great pride in his physical appearance. Over the next several years, David found himself in trouble with the law several times. In April 2011, David was arrested for DUI. In June 2014, he was arrested for harassment. In August 2014, he was charged with assaulting his mother. She went out of her way to protect David from severe legal consequences. In June of 2015, David had a disagreement with his father because his father did not want to pay for a vacation David wanted. David physically struck his father repeatedly, and a neighbor called the police. When officers made entry into the residence, they found David standing over his father. David was charged with aggravated assault, public drunkenness, disorderly conduct, and harassment. His father had sustained severe injuries, including damage to his brain and spinal cord. He was sent to a long-term care facility where he died just over 3 years later at the age of 74. Despite the vicious nature of the attack, David once again avoided serious consequences from the criminal justice system. I imagine that David's father must have died from something unrelated to the attack, or David would have been charged with murder. On November 20, 2016, Margaret called 911 from a neighbor's house and reported that she had been attacked by David in her own residence. When the police arrived, they found David intoxicated in his bedroom. He was arrested for assault. Margaret had injuries to her ribs. She said that David picked her up and squeezed her, saying, "This is how the Navy SEALs do it." Despite the gruesome nature of the attack and the fact that David was still on probation from attacking Margaret in 2014, she fought for him to avoid severe legal consequences. She asked for the charge to be reduced to harassment, and it was. David ended up being resentenced for the 2015 attack on his father. He received 8 to 16 months in jail. He claimed his bad behavior was caused by alcohol. David participated in a substance use treatment program and was released from jail early. On July 28, 2017, David was arrested for DUI and careless driving after being involved in a motor vehicle collision. He He asked the police to give him a break because he was a Navy SEAL. In August of 2018, David met a woman online and they became romantically involved. He told her that he was a Navy SEAL. She believed this explained why he was closed off emotionally. In July 2019, David and his girlfriend traveled to Atlantic City, New Jersey, and stayed at a hotel. This 5-day trip to the Garden State was to see if their relationship was going to work out. Making a trip to New Jersey to test the health of a relationship is like making a trip to a landfill to test the effectiveness of a new cologne. It is a method of evaluating a product under the harshest of conditions. According to his girlfriend, David physically struck her early in the trip. This took her by surprise and was frightening, but she continued with the vacation. A few days later, David started torturing her in the hotel room. This involved choking her until she passed out, punching her in the face, and waterboarding her in the bathroom. After 3 days, a bellhop knocked on the door, which allowed David's girlfriend to escape. She went to a nearby room and started screaming about how David was going to kill her. The police obtained a warrant for David's arrest, but failed to log it into the National Crime Information Center. This meant that out-of-state police departments would not be able to see there was a warrant. David fled from the state of New Jersey and eventually made his way back to Pennsylvania. On August 24, 2019, David allegedly attacked a Lyft driver who became lost on a trip. He should have been taken into custody for the New Jersey warrant, but again, the police had no way to find out about the warrant. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. Starting on August 30, 2019, David repeatedly physically attacked his mother Margaret in her home on the 100 block of Old Orchard Drive in South Fayette Township, Pennsylvania. This is just southwest of Pittsburgh. Sometime around September 1, David murdered Margaret. David's uncle died the same day. This was completely unrelated to the murder. Family members tried to contact Margaret to tell her about the death, but they could not reach her. One of her daughters contacted David, and he told her that he was at Margaret's house. Margaret's daughter asked to speak with her mother, but David said she was sleeping. At other times, David said that Margaret had been drinking and taking pills. On September 2, at 10:57 a.m., the police responded to Margaret's house because her family called for a welfare check. They forced entry and noticed blood in many areas of the residence. 67-year-old Margaret Sumney was found dead in her bathtub. She had a spinal fracture and broken ribs. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, neck, and torso. 30-year-old David Sumney was arrested a few days later when he attended his uncle's funeral. The police found that David had jewelry, debit cards, and 3 blank checks. All these items belonged to his mother. Prior to his arrest, David had rented a hotel room. He gave the manager a set of pearls and told her they were from a special lady to a special lady. The police searched his hotel room. They found a .38 caliber revolver owned by Margaret, as well as her jewelry and credit cards. When David's cell phone was examined, the police made a frightening discovery. David had taken 277 photographs, which documented the murder of his mother. The first photograph was taken on August 30 at 4:50 a.m. Many of the images featured Margaret. In one, she was holding a bloody rag on her head. In another, she was lying on the floor covered in blood. Several images captured Margaret's body being posed in her bed. David took one image of himself giving a thumbs up. In addition to taking morbid photographs on his phone, David had made a few internet searches. For example, how to clean up a crime scene, how long does it take before body starts to decompose, and how long do you wait to dispose of the body. David was charged with criminal homicide, abuse of a corpse, and theft by unlawful taking. Despite having what appeared to be a very strong case, the state was not feeling confident in their ability to get a conviction for first-degree murder. Prosecutors decided to offer David Sumney a plea deal. In August of 2022, David pleaded guilty to third-degree homicide. He was sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison. With credit for time served, he is eligible for release in 2039. Only one of Margaret's family members supported this plea deal. At his sentencing, David said, quote, "I cannot believe I would let myself get into such a state where I could do something so bad, so horrible. I cannot believe what I did, that I killed my own mother. I cannot stop thinking about it. I think about it every day. I'm sorry, but sorry doesn't cut it. I handled this as badly as a person could have. To my family, to my sisters and my aunts, I know it's impossible to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. I just want to let them know I am truly sorry." Unquote. At the time making this video, David is serving his sentence. Reportedly, he is a model prisoner who participates in Bible studies with other inmates. Now moving to my analysis. The decision not to take David's case to trial has drawn a lot of criticism. The state indicated that they agreed to the plea deal for a few different reasons. They did not think that David had any apparent motive, and he had a history of mental illness, including substance use. A mental health clinician said that David had reduced mental capacity due to extremely high doses of Adderall. The judge in this case implied that those seeking the first-degree murder conviction were making their decisions based on emotions, but prosecutors had to work within the constraints of reality. I can appreciate that plea bargains serve an important role in the criminal justice system. For example, they save the state money, but I don't think it requires emotional reasoning to believe that David would have been convicted of first-degree murder. Just because emotions accompany an argument doesn't automatically mean those emotions influence the argument. A person can logically believe that David committed first-degree murder and be angry at the same time, without the emotions affecting the decision-making. In this instance, there was plenty of evidence supporting the idea that David would have been convicted. For example, David brutally tortured and murdered his mother with his bare hands. He took photographs of his work, in which he appeared to be pleased with himself. David was clearly trying to clean up the crime scene. He made internet searches consistent with that activity, and items were found which point to a cleanup. For example, a bottle of ammonia that was almost empty, gloves, bleach, and blood-stained towels. David also had an extensive criminal history, which involved attacking his mother and his father. As far as a possible defense, David may have used alcohol and Adderall, but substance use is not a defense for murder. When considering the evidence, I think the state should have tried David for first-degree murder. They made a massive error in this case. He was offered mercy many times in the past, but that strategy did not pay off. Moving to my last item, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. David appeared to be cold, callous, impulsive, irresponsible, aggressive, violent, self-centered, demanding, controlling, and manipulative. He had a need for admiration, a sense of entitlement, and was unwilling to regulate his intake of substances. When he was young, David's parents fueled his sense of entitlement by giving him everything that he wanted. This led him to believe that he was special, wonderful, and perfect. When David entered the real world, he soon found out that he wasn't special. He decided to retreat to a world where he was taken care of. David spent time with his mother and father. In order not to appear like a failure to them, David pretended to be a Navy SEAL. When David could not get his way from his parents, he became violent. He attacked his mother in 2014, attacked his father in 2015, and attacked his mother again in 2016. After this attack, he said to his mother, "I'll get you next time." Unfortunately, Margaret chose to believe his stories like he was a Navy SEAL, but did not believe his threat. Margaret repeatedly advocated for her son with the criminal justice system and was astonishingly effective. Until David pleaded guilty to her murder, he had never been convicted of a felony. I believe that Margaret probably felt conflicted. It is clear that she was afraid of David at certain times. For example, she purchased the .38 caliber revolver that David later took from her in order to defend herself from him. There is this sense that David was able to convince his mother that he had changed. He knew how to manipulate her. Margaret had unwittingly created her own killer. She fashioned him from a place of mercy, love, compassion, and trust. Unfortunately, her kindness was badly misplaced. She falsely believed that her son could be redeemed. When David murdered his mother, he killed the last person on earth who believed in him. Those are my thoughts in the case of David Sumney. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.